Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker coming to the stage, another fellow board member here at the International Mandela Effect. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. Another speaker here at the International Mandela Effect Conference, a board member with us, a really, really good friend of mine. Before I tell this story every time, and I know you guys get sick of hearing it, but before we became IMEC, Shane and I were really good friends. We actually did some collaboration work prior to, coming together to build this. And we actually had a conversation one time, a 6-hour conversation about a tree, did we not? Ladies and gentlemen, after discovering the Mandela Effect phenomenon, Shane came across the work of past life regression and hypnotherapist Dolores Cannon. Many of the sessions she shared in her books pointed to an impending shift in human consciousness. Some sessions even seem to describe the Mandela Effect or supernatural alteration to our material reality. Conducting hundreds of his own sessions, he observed a similar trend. The world appears to be undergoing profound changes, with the Mandela Effect being just the beginning of a seemingly science fiction-like reality. The Mandela Effect acts as a gateway to a deeper understanding of our reality. How can individuals access this higher knowledge? Is it reliable? And how can we tap into this divine intelligence or on demand to bring about meaningful changes in our daily lives? Shane Cornell Robinson collaborates with clients globally to provide deeper insights into their personal journeys through the exploration of higher consciousness using the Beyond Quantum Healing method. He serves on the board of the International Mandela Effect Conference, a 501c3 organization dedicated to raising the awareness of the Mandela Effect phenomenon. Shane is also the co-author of the 2019 book Mandela Effect, Friend or Foe, which we seen on the screen a moment ago, and the host of the YouTube channel Unbiased and on the Fence. Shane's lifelong passion is his work as a visual artist, performer, and music producer. Originally from St. Louis, Missouri, he and his wife of 30 years, along with their 5 children and 3 grandchildren, now reside in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome back to the stage, once again, Shane Robinson!
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. All right, let's start by, is this on? Let's start by taking a deep breath. With a big sigh of relief, of course. So what I want to cover today is my Mandela Effect journey leading up to today. I'll briefly summarize sort of how I got to this point and the information along the way. But if you want a little bit more detail into it, I've spoken about a lot of these concepts in my previous talks. So I'll point out where you can find them as we move along. But for me, the Mandela Effect started for me in spring of 2016. I'm the type of person that likes to look around at the conspiracies people are talking about. It's just interesting to me. Well, this one really interested me when I came across these 2 particular ones in 2016. I knew something was going on with these particular Mandela effects. And in fact, Candace just brought up one of these because it was a big one for her too. So if you didn't know, these are the correct ones. And okay, so I was 100% sure something was going on, but deep down inside I felt like there had to be some sort of explanation, like something that wasn't crazy sounding, right? So about a year later, I was blown away when I found out that the thinker statue had changed, because I had gotten one of these as a little kid. I was only like 4 or 5 years old. It was before school, and went to a garage sale, and my mom told me to pick anything I wanted out. And believe it or not, this was like the best thing they had to offer. It was like an elderly couple with a garage sale. So I ended up getting one at like 4, and then having it on my desk and in my room and trying to draw it over the years. So I knew exactly what it looked like. But for those that don't know, this is the current way, with the fist down by the chin. He's actually sucking on his knuckles now. When I first noticed this, he had his chin under his fist under his chin. But this one has some of the coolest residue. I mean, some of the most sci-fi residue you can come across, because you'll have these people that took a picture next to the thinker, and at the time they took the picture, they mimicked it with their fist to their forehead, but now the statue has changed, but the people haven't. They're still in their original pose. So this let me know that we're probably looking at one timeline that was changed or manipulated in some way. The other thing is, it made me realize that perhaps residue, when we look at like Mandela Effect residue, reality can change, but human consciousness itself is what remembers. So like you might have someone who learned a cover song, they go out, they play the song all the time, and then all of a sudden the song changes, but they're still singing it the way they always did. So that's human consciousness remembering the way it was. Another example is if you work somewhere and you create a price tag, if you just copy and paste the Febreze label from the computer, it's going to change with reality. But if you know what it looks like and you write it out with a Sharpie, Febreze, $5.99, whatever, it's not going to change because human consciousness was introduced to it. So one of the ways I realized that at least one of the ways that residue is created is from human consciousness, remembering the old reality that supposedly never existed, right? This is probably my favorite one, because if you look at the statue, he's changed, but here you have like 16 softball students all posing the wrong way. Nobody noticed it? So once again, the statue changed, but the people have not. Here we have a famous bodybuilder pose called the thinker. Fist to the forehead. Why would they name it the thinker with the fist to the forehead? Another example of how residue can kind of be created indirectly with the actual reality we remember. Something I want to point out here, though, is the right elbow and right knee. You notice that the elbow and knee are on the same one, on the same side. Another piece of residue was this photo taken of George Bernard Shaw, and it's called George Bernard Shaw in the pose of Rodin's thinker. And this came out 2 years after the statue. Take note that this is a mirror image, for me anyway, of the actual original thinker statue. But you'll see that his elbow is on the same knee, on the same side. But if we look at the statue from the front, you can see he's actually kind of twisted. He's got his right elbow on his left knee. And his left elbow is like back at his side, and nothing's on the right leg. So you can see just how out of whack he actually is. He used to be more stable, right? And so I noticed how he was twisted to the left. And what the heck is that sticking out the side of his head, right? I don't remember that. So I noticed things moving to the left. When I noticed that, I started noticing the T's in many of the popular logos had been also chopped off on one side and moved to, the left this way, if you're from the point of view of the T. So this was another confirmation that I was on the right track. I went into this more deeply in my very first talk in 2019. But I was brought to the point of looking at energies on the planet. The left brain, the right brain, the analytical part, the creative part, the masculine and the feminine. Well, if you look at the earth and all the issues we have, it's like a masculine problem. Right? It's like the masculine energies typically overpower the feminine energies, and we end up with things like war and mean people, right? So after I started thinking about this, the American Gothic painting came across my awareness, and look, the divine feminine on the right is now much younger and immature and looking to the left. I remembered it, the lady on the next to the farmer being older, kind of like the picture on the right there, and looking straight ahead. So the thing is, once you start getting these pictures, universe will give you little confirmations and say, yeah, you're on the right track, keep going, So enter Dolores Cannon. Around the same time of looking into the Mandela Effect, I came across a video about the Mandela Effect, and Dolores Cannon was in there. I had a clip from her, and in this clip, she's not actually mentioning the Mandela effect, but she is talking about things like a split in realities between an old world and a new earth. She describes it as a dimensional shift that most people would not even notice. Does that sound familiar? And then she says our frequency and vibration will hold us to the appropriate reality. So if you're more in line with this reality, you stay here, and people just kind of go where they resonate the most with. And that's what you kind of want, That's just how it is. And she describes it as being like a cell dividing. So one of the famous pictures that goes around is this one talking about Earth shifting to 5D, and you kind of got the old Earth and the new Earth dividing like a cell, like she talked about. And this is from her 3 Ways of Volunteers in the New Earth book. As the new Earth approaches, our way of thinking is being challenged more and more. The veil is thinning and lifting as our consciousness expands. This is a requirement for entering the new dimension with the raising of our vibrations and frequencies. The old paradigms and archaic belief systems must fall to the wayside to make room for the new. So I think this is what we've been looking at for the last few years. So this book had a profound effect for me. They have 2 different covers. So I put the one I originally remember, plus one they just recently did, but it's the same book. So in this book, The 3 Ways of Volunteers in the New Earth, that came out in 2011, volunteers refers to the people that incarnated now at this time to help in the transition of the planet. So I also talked about this in my first talk, so I won't go into the whole thing. I'll summarize what she talks about in the book. So in chapter 23, The Best Agenda for Earth, there is her client named Randy goes into a session, and he goes up to the snowy mountaintop, and there's 2 light alien higher consciousness type beings having a discussion about the best thing to do for Earth, the best agenda for Earth. And so they get into the discussion. One faction actually wants to let us evolve naturally and not influence us in any way. And the other one wants to have a small influence that doesn't violate free will. So, how do they suggest helping? Now, this is important because this is like the key thing, and this is what really has blown my mind and has grown into more than what I originally read. But in the quote, it says, they might influence by making material changes to this dimensional reality, observable changes. Now, it doesn't say the Mandela effect, but it sure sounds like it, doesn't it? So they would make these observable changes. The things I didn't notice in 2019 when I did my talk, and I included this quote, was that in this session, they say, Randy says they're projecting in just to show him what's going on. They're not really here. They're just putting on a show for him to observe the conversation. So when you read that they're making changes in this dimensional reality, it kind of makes you realize they were projecting in from another dimension, right? And that these changes would be observable. So like maybe they make changes now that aren't observable. They're going to be making changes that are observable. But up to this point in this session, they had not interfered. They had never been seen. So any kind of sightings you've seen with aliens or anything, it wasn't this group, at least. We know that much because they've been completely invisible, only offering frequencies to help the planet. They feel like our parents. They were their children, and they're just wanting the best for us to help us grow and expand. They want us to recognize and be aware that we have free will. And that's one of the discussions that they're actually having here, is that they're afraid that they will violate free will. Now, I kind of talked about this in the video, and I'll bring it up now, but I think what they did was offer alternatives for what you can think the Mandela effect is, sort of like CERN, for instance, right? Because you take CERN, there's not a lot you can do with that information except for say, oh, that's what's causing the Mandela effect, and you can kind of shelf it and not have to really look at it, So that's one of the reasons I don't typically go for the CERN idea. I put it on the shelf, but there's not a lot you can do with it. And I think it was actually provided as what I call a doubtlet. So to not violate free will. You're like, oh, these dudes are playing with this computer thing and they're messing up reality. That's what it is. It's nothing more than that. So. And they also want us to be consciously aware that the universe's knowledge and gifts are available to us. Beyond quantum healing. So this is where beyond quantum healing actually entered my realm, and Candace Crawl Goldman just happened to synchronistically enter my life, right? And I was already blown away. And for you guys that have experienced the Mandela Effect, you know how it can shatter your paradigm, right? It can change how you view everything. Believe it or not, BQH has also done that for me. Not as someone, receiving a client, but as a practitioner, because you find little pieces of yourself inside everybody, and you begin to learn how to grow for yourself as well. So it's really cool. I've had, most people think it's just past life regression. You just talked about this, right? I was blown away. It's so much more. Not only do you can totally feel the presence of the higher teams that come into the session, and it's more like you're just going in there and helping the client get out of the way so this information can come through them. You don't really have to do anything, you know what I mean? And so I've seen miraculous things. I saw somebody that had a spontaneous, miraculous healing just right there on the spot, and I used to hear Dolores talk about this, and she'd be like, I'm not doing it. I thought she was just being humble, but she's really not doing it. The people are healing themselves from their higher self. The healing just comes through, and they receive the healing. I retrieved information that was lost or blocked. My friend Eileen had a trip where her and her sister was missing a block of time. So we went back and visited that, and in her original memory, she remembered a deer walking out in the road, but she didn't remember much after that and had lost a lot of time, like an hour or two. Well, it turns out that the deer was really an alien that was stopping the car and then actually teleported her to the ship along with her sister. So all this information came out like in a session. I'm like blown away, right? Probably one of the cool ones, I was just talking to somebody, is I got to speak to a non-terrestrial in real time that's currently on a ship orbiting Earth, and they're waiting for the shift. And she says there's a bunch of them. Now, when this person starts explaining to me, I'm like in a session with somebody, but I'm thinking we're looking at like their previous life or a future life or something like that. But it wasn't their life at all. They had a special gift. This non-terrestrial teenage. She said she would be about 17 in Earth years. She said she'd been on that ship in orbit since she was around 8 in Earth years, and they're just simply waiting and watching, rooting for us to make the big shift. And she says people come from all over all the galaxies to come watch this. So I'm like blown away, right? Well, I also had the opportunity with a lot of my clients experiencing the Mandela Effect to ask what the heck it is, right? Okay, yeah, I want to kind of define Mandela effects first because, it's used in a broad sense to just kind of mean a reality shift in some kind of way or something like that. So think of it in the broadest terms, but I laid these out and because of the way they come in the session, you typically, will ask why something's happening. So in the first one I want to give that comes up quite often is increased awareness, that people have just grown to a point now, or it was brought into their awareness for the sole purpose of waking them up right now. So all of us here were awakened by some higher force to wake us up to know what we can do and the power that we have right now. Awakened and activated is the purpose of that one. Now this one's similar, shift in frequency of the individual. So maybe it wasn't like someone told you about it, but you just increased your frequency and you just started noticing them. That's another way it happens, and that's just your own personal growth. Another one is realities are splitting or merging. That comes up quite a bit. And it's because it's a side effect of New Earth becoming a reality. Shifting realities. Now, this gets more into what Cynthia Sue Larson has been talking about for decades, right? Because you can shift your reality for a desired outcome. But this is actually used against us, and that's one of the things I want to point out today. because you can use it for a desired outcome. But, with things like predictive programming, television programming, they can get you thinking in a certain way to create the reality that's a desired outcome for them rather than for you. So our sessions are really geared at, helping someone get the desired outcome for their own personal journey. So one of the things that came up as a Mandela effect that I don't think of as it has all the attributes of a Mandela effect, but it's AI inserted. I did a video about a year ago. It's actually got this thumbnail on it here, just called the AI's insertion into our reality. But I won't go over all these. But a lot of these you probably haven't even heard of. The Cabbage Patch Babies were these postcards that were going around in like the 1800s that had all these weird pictures of babies in crops, babies as crops. The orphan trains is another big one. There was just all these orphans on trains repopulating, and according to the session, all of these were inserted by AI. They're really real, but we're being used to create all of the details with it. The Tartarian mud flood and the reset, some of the details you see that are different with world fairs, even, what was it, the Black Time attack? Germany attacking, that was even an AI insert. So they're not inserted to be Mandela effects. They're actually inserted to be something that you sort of come across and you feel like you discovered it, like, oh, look at this hidden history, right? So they're kind of covering their tracks that they just inserted it by making it look like it's always been here, which it has if you go look at it. So it does have that effect like the Mandela effect, but you won't ask too many questions. And if you look into why they're doing the Cabbage Patch Babies, they'll just say, oh, it's just a cute little story like the stork story, about where babies come from, to avoid embarrassing conversations with kids. So that's what they say. But in the session, they said they're actually creating them to have an influx of non-player characters or background people, which is backdrop people, I think is what Dolores called them. But basically, these are people that are just completely asleep. They might just be an empty shell. They might be if they are an empty shell, they create the possibility to have like walk-ins, though. Do you guys know the concept of a walk-in? And you guys know the concept of NPCs pretty much? Okay, cool. So I asked, I'm like, well, what kind of power do we have against these AI inserts, It says a negative realm insertion can still be positive if someone chooses it to be positive. It sounds unbelievable, but it's really true. In fact, when someone chooses to create a positive outcome from a negative realm insertion, it now becomes an option for other people who would have only seen and defaulted to the negative option before its creation. Now, this is something I kind of naturally do. I've always kind of done it. Like, I just try to play, like, whenever like the 9/11 stuff came out, and I'm like, why would they do that? And I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, when you can tell they actually did do it, like, why might they really do that? And you kind of just brainstorm ideas. Well, one of the things I did with the all these NPCs, the golden ticket. This is where it ties this in. Okay, so you read Dolores Cannon's book, and all these people wanted to come. The call went out. All these souls wanted to incarnate here. They ran out of room. They just created a bunch of NPCs to let a bunch of more light workers into our reality. You see that? So everything they do to actually bring about something negative, we can use the power of our imagination just to see how that's going to backfire on them again, So imagining a multitude of starseed volunteers, I'm seeing them coming in. I'm imagining this influx of high vibrational beings into the planet, accelerating the planet's frequency growth, and visualizing the planet growing brighter with love and compassion. So from that negative realm insert, and even though I told you guys my idea, just me thinking of the idea and meditating on it puts it in the field, and someone else might say, what if, and I was just talking to Lee about this. I'm like, wait, I might have got it from somebody else, So I visualize that everything employed to slow the shift only accelerates it. Kind of like you're trying to defuse the bomb, and the more you tinker with it, the faster it starts counting down. That sort of idea. So this is the powerful thing that I ask my guides. I'm like, what's something simple we can all do to keep us in this state of really perpetual, just keeping our intentions always pushing us to this new earth? And they say, just like when you're watching a really good movie and people told you, go watch it, it's a good movie, you know it's going to have a good ending, but you reach this point where everything seems so hopeless and lost, but you know your friends wouldn't have sent you to the bad movie, right? So somewhere in the back of your mind, you're like, man, I don't know how this is going to play out, but it's going to happen some way, right? And you just know. And so they were saying, just have that feeling in life. When you don't know how something's going to work out or it looks hopeless, just say, I don't know how this is going to happen, but this is going to be really cool when this, you know what I mean? And just keeping it, and it really ties into how good can it get, doesn't it? Right. So we saw it happen here, a couple weeks ago, where the one storm that kind of surprised us all, Hurricane Helena, did all this devastating, all this damage up north from here. And then everybody started paying attention and used their power to give peace to the storm, kind of like Jesus on the boat, right? So we have the power to speak peace to the storm. Does anybody cloud bust? Do any cloud busting? So yeah, you can actually focus on the clouds and dissolve them and have them just have the sunshine. I've done it so many times. Okay, so when I was like thinking like the imagination is everything, you know, and I was thinking about how like our connection to the divine, when you look at the left brain and the right brain, your left brain's all logical. It's always like, if you think about like your right brain, like your imagination computer that you can do anything with, we typically let our left brain get on that computer and look up a bunch of scary stuff, right? It's like, well, this happened. What if this happens, right? So we actually, that's what happens. We allow our left brain to hop on the computer or our right brain and just dream up the most horrible stuff, right? But it is really our connection to the divine. And really, as our job as practitioners is to get people out of their left brain that's always trying to protect them. It's only out of like trying to protect them, but it's fear-based, you know? It's like, oh, you know, this might happen or this might happen. So it's cautious, right? So then I came across this scripture, and look at this little thumbnail I picked. It reminded me of it. I picked it out before I knew about cutester running around here, but isn't that interesting? Little synchronicity of we're doing Bali. But the scripture that says, assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. So then I got to thinking, wonder if the kingdom of heaven is your imagination, right? Because we're told it's within, right? So I came up with this little idea, a real simple way that kids think. The little girl says, Mommy, why was that man yelling? The mom says, some people are just mean, sweetheart. The little girl says, why can't people just be nicer? And the mom says, it's not that simple, sweetie. But it really is, isn't it? Right? But we program our kids that it's not that easy because it doesn't seem that easy. But just like that, the little girl saves the world, you know? Okay, so this gets to one of the questions we had yesterday during Cynthia's Q&A. How can we expect to be positive with so much negativity in the world? The last time this question came up, I gave the example of, you know, you're in the center, you have your area where you can affect things, your sphere of influence, if you will, and it's the green area that you can affect. And in this area are your family, your friends. If you saw some abuse in this area, you'd be able to call and do something about it. But if you just hear about some of the stuff going on, you feel like it's out of reach and it's out in this area. Okay, so the green area is your 3D influence, and the blue area is things that are out of your 3D reach, but it's only out of your physical reach. And we talked about things like giving money to people who are it's green for them, basically. So people who are investigating or doing things like that, you can give to organizations like that, perhaps. But for the most part, if it's outside of that, we feel like we're hopeless, and we shouldn't let those things pull us down. And we really shouldn't, but we can actually use the power of our imagination to dream something better for those things. Like in the example of the storm being changed, or even if it's a hurricane, so many times they'll like point out all of the devastation. And every now and then they'll show a clip of some guy who got in his own boat and went out to rescue people. And those are the ones that make you cry and that touch your heart, right? So it's like those things. So like the Helena incident, I was focusing on people being rescued, people being found. I was focusing on people like acting out of love. And those are the kind of energies I was sending to that situation because, you see all that devastation, but it's beautiful when you can imagine the good that's going to come out of it because it's never always all bad, right? So we can affect this area with our imagination, with our intentions. All right. Here we have, is everybody familiar with the nickel? For how many is this like the main nickel for you? Do you guys remember the nickel? You guys remember a newer? Who remembers a newer one? Yeah. Have you guys seen this one? This one came out for a short time in 2005. But this nickel right here has been our main nickel since 2006. That's a 2016, but it's been our main nickel since 2006. Is this a surprise for anybody? This one always gets people. I had to stick it in there. Because it doesn't matter how many times I show it, people are like, what? Like, yeah, check your pocket. You got them in there. Okay, so I created this piece of art for a competition when I was in art college. My professor said, you should enter this competition. So I created this piece of art. It took me like over a year to do it all, but I actually created it in 2009 into 2010. I entered the competition. I didn't win. So I ended up uploading it onto Fine Art America in 2012, just because I had no other use for it at that point. But basically, I took the word love in like two or three dozen languages and placed it on top of a map that I downloaded off of Google to use as a guide. And then once I got all the letters in place after over a year of doing that, I just turned the map layer off so that I was just left with my work on top of it. So when I had heard the Mandela Effect had affected the maps, I thought, let me go check out the one here. Now you can see South America looks like it's still to the right. The space, for me, the space between here and the space between here should be more similar. So it should actually be like more like the edge over there. But I saw that and I'm like, oh yeah, it didn't preserve the old way it was. But I was surprised when I started looking a little bit closer at it here. So this is what it looked like in my program once I opened it back up in the program and turned the hidden layer back on. You can kind of see the map underneath it. And when I would zoom in, because this is very big, I started noticing these are islands here that weren't here when I created this. All of these, all of them, they weren't there when I created it. It just looks like I ignored them. But I'm positive, and to open something, oh, by the way, this was on a hard drive that wasn't connected to the internet. So for those who think maybe AI got sent out and just started changing everything, it would be impossible for this because I grabbed it, I plugged it in and went straight to it, Now, if you look over here, it's hard to see on here, but look at all these islands. It looks like I just ignored. There's a bunch over here. I would say there's hundreds more islands. And even some of, like this background image you're looking at here was the original map I downloaded, but some of the words on it are even, look here, they would never release a map with words overlapping like that. You see that there? So the Maldives, as you see, weren't there on my map when I created it. There's a whole cluster here. There's just all over the place. There's so many places. Now, this was probably my favorite part. This is the tip of South America. You can see the mini map there it's showing you. This is where the edge went before, and it looks like I just ignored it, all this, See how crazy that is? So needless to say, I was blown away when I came back and started actually looking at this map that I spent so many hours on to see it's so different than what it was. Now, check this out. Not only do we have these... Where was Denmark? Denmark was not there when I did my map, or they would have some letters on it. I think one of these are Ibiza over here. So All right. Well, what's interesting is someone came up at the 2019 conference after I showed this particular slide and said that they remember Denmark being somewhere else. You remember that, right, Jerry? All right. Let's see. So that's it. Let's do some questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shane Robinson! Does anyone else remember Denmark being in another place? Yeah. I do too. That whole section of Europe looks wrong to me. Come on, any questions? You might get off of the hot seat easy today, sir. Oh, nope, here comes Cynthia. She wasn't going to let you get off the hot seat that easy.
I'd love to know more about this information that Dolores Cannon had about the New World. A lot of people, like I didn't even know about Dolores Cannon until rather recently. But obviously, she is fundamental to a lot of what we're looking at with the Mandela Effect and where things might be heading. Is there anything that we might want to be aware of to look for? I was just fascinated with the information you're getting, asking questions about that and the Mandela Effect.
Well, one of the things that Dolores talked about that my radio just started playing it did last night too, so he knows, but an audio book of Dolores that just started playing in my car, and they were talking about the sun would be different. The sun's going to change. Now, this was in the book Keepers of the Garden, so it's older than that one. So it might predate the sun turning white. Many of us, do you guys remember the yellow sun? Yeah. Okay. So in this book, it starts playing, and I'm like, why did that book start playing? And then in that part of the session, she actually talks about that. So I think there's a wealth of information that once you revisit her books, we'll start seeing more of it happening now, because it happened, remember on our show, on Open Tables, Chris had pointed out how a section of one of her books talks about the custard apples growing on the tree. Well, at the time that was written in the book, there were no custard apples, right? So now that we have them, by the way, we have custard apples, if you didn't know. Sound delicious.
I've got another part of the question, which is if you've noticed changes in her books, like we've seen with the Bible, and I've seen 2 of my books change.
Nothing specific like that, but definitely noticing my own consciousness. It's kind of like your books. You can go back and read your book and get so much more out of it because you're in a different place and you're able to receive more. So it's just like that with some of Dolores's stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, might happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. And then, since no one else is here, take advantage of this. Okay, the other part of it is when you're looking at getting information about the Mandela Effect, it seems like a perfect opportunity to tune into these hypnosis sessions and collect the collective information that we all actually have access to. Right. So are you formulating new questions? Are you still continuing that research too?
Well, that one there, those are just people that had that as a question. Oh, okay. I sort of just combined that up or whatever. But yeah, I've with my somnambulist clients, I've definitely, because they allow me to ask what you want or whatever, and I've had things verified that way. But yeah, the answers were much different. I did get the whole AI insertion thing, but I see all that changing now with, we have the World's Fairs that are going to be coming back again pretty soon. So a lot of exciting things happening.
Yeah.
But I think we're here. I think we're actually at the shift, and it's like, because Dolores Cannon has been talking about it, and we're starting to see the things she said we would see when it's happening, the custard apples, the sun changing.
Right.
The Mandela, the exact quote I use, where we'd see material changes in our dimensional reality, observable changes. We're seeing them. So I think, it's a wealth of information in her books. I've only read 3 of them, but I bet, it's just filled with little nuggets here and there that didn't mean a lot when she wrote it to the people reading it. But now I think we'll see, like, well, we have that now. What's that? What the heck?
That is super cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Great talking.
And it can be a Mandela Effect question, or it can be a BQH question.
I have a question. When you talked about the light workers working on like the child trafficking problem,
right?
How do you tap into that?
I see it as someone rescuing them, the angels coming and protecting them. I don't typically put energy into like attacking their attackers or anything like that because it's kind of a negative energy. Right. So I try to comfort the ones that's there, send love to them, make them feel protected, see the angels around them protecting them, and just keep it positive like that, because I know, our imaginations are powerful. They're from God. And when we put that kind of intention, the more of us doing that, because typically the things we think aren't sending good things to them, Mm-hmm. It might be sending bad to the bad people or whatever, maybe not, but it's not helping to make the change that we want to see. And we want to wake up, just like we woke up and there were rainbow mountains, we want to wake up and people are like, pizza what? Right? So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, okay.
My question is,
what, you investigating something?
No, I like your theory about how, they're trying to counteract it and put all these NPCs or the background players are putting them all in here for us to go ahead and light code and give us our own warriors, our own waker and uppers. I like that idea. How did you come up with that kind of thought pattern of that?
Just not thinking negative about stuff. When you'll take time to just consider something positive from something negative, you'll get flooded. We just don't typically do that. We're like, oh man, this is
it's outside the box kind of thing. I like it though. It's like, okay, so we got these NPCs, free guy. Why can't we just give them a little push and wake them up? Yeah,
it's like the same thing we see at the border, right? It's like, except it's a dimensional flooding of aliens.
Well, and maybe they're the ones that need to wake us up.
Hey, never know.
Okay, this question is, have you ever seen repeat NPCs in your life?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'll see them at stores and things like that. I've actually asked about that in a session. I said, so do they have homes? If you follow them home, they will. So it's like, they like disappear out of sight like a video game. But if you're like, I'm going to follow them and see if they're real, get all creepy, like, but follow them home, you'll see that they do have a home, but only when you went and followed them home.
I saw this woman, I heard about the NPCs a long time ago, and I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Recently, I saw this woman, and she was a young Hispanic woman, and she was really attractive. So you kind of notice those people, and she had this outfit that I really liked. And she walked by where I was having lunch or something. Dang, that's a great outfit. The very next day, I saw the same girl in the exact same outfit, also just walking right by where I was, a completely different part of town. So I just, that happened to you too. It's like, oh, that's obviously an NPC.
So what's similar to that is that it really gives you that game-like feeling, right? So when I was driving for Uber and I'd go to an event and I'd take several people to the event, and then like when the event was over, I'd get calls to pick people up. I'd see the people I was dropping off, like walking, like they just loaded in for me. Like I wouldn't have known, except for the fact that, I just brought them. But it's like, why do they have to fill the space with the same ones I already seen? Why not? There's thousands of people at this event.
And that's what I was thinking too, that it was the same girl, but a different day. I think it was the next day in a completely different part of town, but also kind of just doing the same thing, just like walking by.
Yeah. So, yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it happens a lot and we just don't notice, Any other questions or comments?
Going once.
Come on, Phil.
He couldn't see Liz come up here and not make a trip himself.
Okay, NPCs. What about? Okay, there's the one walking by. They're NPCs. The interface. Okay, approaching an NPC. What do you get? What is the interaction? Have you tried? What's it like? Is it robotic?
No, they're regular people.
Just regular?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They don't like to think outside the box. What'd you say? It's off. They don't like to think outside the... You'll notice they don't like to think outside the box. They don't like to hear about you tell them about the Mandela Effect and they're like looking at their phone, So, but it's been brought to me that a completely asleep person and an NPC are indistinguishable, and that everybody should be treated with love. It's because it can be a slippery slope. You're like, oh, that person's not real. I can flip them off, or you know what I'm saying. So it's not an excuse to treat people unlovingly. So I typically don't even talk about the whole NPC thing because people just aren't ready to hear it. They use it as an excuse to mistreat people or treat people less. So I think it's good for us to know that, because then it makes sense why that, you know, you get some of the weird responses when you try to talk about the Mandela effect. But it could just be that the person just isn't ready for it, you know? And I think it's like good to let people wake up on their own time. If they're doing that weird thing where, you know, you just blew their mind, but yet they're looking on their phone, then they're just not ready. Or sometimes you'll get like a fire engine blaring by or something. You're like, the universe is like, just let them go. It's not time for them, you know?
It's not a license to offend.
Exactly.
And it looks like we have one more question up here.
Hey.
This is the NPC thing, and after reading Dolores Cannon about the NPCs, I got really interested. And I kind of tied that together with Neville Goddard's work. And I don't know a stranger. I talk to everybody. They come to me. So, yeah, NPCs are out there. And I took the attitude, and Sean was saying this, they're coming down here, and they could be populated with starseeds or other things that we don't want them to be populated with. But we, again, can turn them on. And it's the Dolores feed a baby steak, a little piece here, a little chop of seed or two. It's pretty cool to watch it happen. But Neville Goddard talks about, and you were talking about the woman walking the street. If you see this homeless person or whatever, visualize them at night when you go to sleep. See them in a different state. Put them in another state. And that's how I deal with people, but NPCs. And like you said, we just treat them all with love.
Yeah. Or rescuing is another good one for the kids, you know, to focus on rescuing.
So I was just going to go back to the repeat NPCs thing. Have you ever heard the story of the guy with the lamp? That he was living his normal life, and he noticed a lamp all of a sudden in his house, and it just looked wrong. Like it was a lamp, but it looked wrong. Right. And so he kept seeing it and noticing it, and every time he saw it and every time he noticed it, it got weirder. And, and he just kept fixating on it. He couldn't even focus on his wife or his kids or anything. And he just kept focusing on it and obsessing about it. And it's the lamp that woke him up from the coma he was in, and that whole life wasn't real. Oh, wow. And so my question is, do you think that the repeat NPCs might be somebody who's trying to wake you up to something or make you realize that you're being, that you must be asleep about something, or you need to realize something?
Totally. Yeah, I think anytime you get a synchronicity or something weird like that happens, it brings you back to the now moment, and we should pay attention to what's going on. You're like, what's going on right now? Why did I get that synchronicity? Is there something more than just the signpost that I'm on the right path? So that's another thing I do. If I'm like, what's going on? That person just walked by. What do you want? What are you telling me, universe? You know what I mean? But yeah, that's really cool when that happens.
Thank you.
It's a hell of a stories. Hey, I love you so much.
I love you so much. Thank you so much, Candace.
Well, I just thought I'd throw this little new NPC thing that came through in a session for me. So when we think about incarnating this planet, we think about it really simplistically, don't we? Like, we've got a soul, and soul decides you're going to incarnate here. But it can be just so much richer than that. And one of the things that I've learned is your soul, for, you know, it can do many things at once. And sometimes one of the things that it can do is just give partial energy to have partial experience. So actually in a session that I did, I learned that it's like if your soul wants to do a little of this and do a little of that and be a little over here and have a little of this. So it takes part of its energy and animates a being on the planet in the terms of an NPC, because there's not a lot of energy required to animate that person. It can go, still has a life, still has a human life,
but it doesn't require the same amount of energy from the original source to have it do anything. And what we've also learned too is because this is the double diamond slope, right? This is the hard place. And so even like some of those babies who come in that I take photos of, they may never have been physical, right? And their whole idea is, well, I want to try that, but I'm going to, I think because of my energies, history and all that, I got a couple days in me. We don't think like that, do we? We think about a baby being born and then having a life. But if from that perspective of, let me give that a try, just a little bit. And of course, it's devastation for a family, but it's actually part of the plan. And it's part of all of the people who participated in that plan too. But the NPC is also part of it too, which is like, it doesn't take a whole lot, it's a percentage of other kind of energy that can also have an experience. It's like spreading out the soul energy and experiencing pieces of this world without a huge energetic investment.
Very good. Yeah, and it reminds me of how you always want to go with the crowd, and so the more crowd there is, the harder it's going to be to sort of break free and say, go do your own thing. How many go and do your own thing usually? I figure there's a bunch of you in here. Yeah, I'm going to do my own thing, kind of go to. You got a question, Lee? Or another question?
All right, so Lee's going to come up and ask a question. It's actually by proxy from someone else, just so you know. He's not getting two questions.
You got your ticket.
The golden one, you best believe it. No, it was under with this whole NPC thing, since it's the big kind of questions going on. It's just asking, how couldn't we tell if they are a background player or an NPC?
It doesn't matter.
And I was thinking that too. I was like, it just happens. I always say it's that odd moment in the quiet part of your day. The little oddness walks through.
You know how you tell the same way you tell if an extra is an extra or a movie star. You wait and see if they're going to enter the scene. Are they going to get on camera at some point, or are they going to stay in the background?
That's that weirdness. That's that one part quiet. Everything's going good and nothing's left of the day. You have that one person that walks through it. It could be a good encounter or it could be a weird one, but it is that one that gets me
the
all the
director
time. Yeah,
in the camera.
Yeah, just that one thing all the time. So that's it is one.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shane Robinson!
Love you, babe.
Love you, brother.
Love yours.